Okay, so we are going to just dive in a little bit into the syllabus for 691, which is talking about supplemental programs that are supporting instruction in schools. And so we'll clarify some of the assignments and things that we need to do. And I will say at the very beginning, if we need to be flexible with deadlines or projects or kind of look at things week to week as we get into the post-Christmas break pandemic world. We don't really know what's going to be happening week to week, so we'll just kind of see what happens. So everything's flexible. So if you have any needs or questions, just reach out anytime. So I'm not going to read kind of the basic stuff of the syllabus information. So as far as contacting me, if obviously you have my email, all my contact information should be there. If you guys like need something urgently, you have a quick question, just so everybody has it, my cell phone number is 314-374-9226. And especially because like during the day I'm out in classrooms or in meetings, so I may not be able to respond to emails right away. So if you have a quick question, usually text I can respond to pretty quickly. Just tell me in the text who you are and what class you're asking about, so I know, because I also chair dissertation writers and things like that, so I want to make sure I can answer your question best. There isn't a textbook required for this class, but there are several links embedded within the course page in Brightspace and the syllabus. So those are going to be where you need to navigate, and pretty much a great majority of them are through DESE because we're looking at those supplemental programs. So I will leave the standards and objectives and things like that for you guys. This is our first semester using Brightspace, and so it is new to me. It seems so far pretty easy to navigate, but if there are any glitches in anything in the transfer from ALNet to Brightspace, just send me an email or message and let me know if like a link is not working or if something's going on, and we'll be able to get that fixed. So looking at page 8, the section that starts assignment overview. So the great thing about Brightspace is a lot of these things are embedded and it's just links within the week that you click on to complete the task. So it's kind of like a to-do list that's in there. So that's nice. But some weeks you'll have a journal post, which is different than a discussion board post. And so it's just kind of like, instead of a discussion board where you're having a back and forth post reply conversation, a journal is just your reflection on something. And so you'll have that I think every week, pretty much every week. And then you guys will also have discussion board posts and responses. I'm pretty sure each of the weeks it asks for replies to 2 posts. So you'll make a post and then reply to 2. I generally try to encourage your post to be finished by Wednesday so that your peers have time by Sunday, when we would normally have work due, to reply within that same week. Obviously, I know things happen, and so if it can't happen by Wednesday, it's not the end of the world, but just be mindful that people are waiting to reply. So if we all wait till Sunday, then we're gonna have a little bit of a hard time there. So there is an introductory post in week 1 and a discussion board post for the content. So just make sure that you're doing both of those. Also, just make sure that your responses are meaningful and not just like, hey, I agree with that. So I haven't taken a look at week 1 yet, so everybody has some time to get into it, but just be mindful of that as you're making your responses. Let's see. On page 9, one of the assignments is a differentiated and supplemental program comparison. So towards the second part of the term, there is an assignment where you're comparing 2 different programs, supplemental programs. So some of the expectations of that are later in the syllabus, looking at the weeks that those are due. Then you also have a few times, I think 3 times, that you're going to have a journal article review reflection, reaction. And so you are choosing the articles for those. They are not provided. If you come across any, or if your district shares any, also just as a note, through your William Woods, I guess, access, if you go to the William Woods library page, all the way down on the website, at the very bottom it'll say library. Because you're a student at William Woods, you have access to a lot of resources and periodicals that you may not have without being a student. So one that's pretty common, I know that there are, oh, now I'm going to forget it. It'll come to me. It's something review journal. Can't remember what the first word is. But if you look on there, you can go into the library part. You can click on different filters, including reviewed and peer-reviewed journals, and you'll be able to find them there. So if you come across one another way, that's fine. But it's just trying to find those professional articles about supplemental programs. And there's a rubric for those reflections too. So we'll talk about that in a minute. Then there's a local board policy activity that you are looking at, basically what board policies align with the supplemental programs. And that could include anything from discipline and funding and programs and things. So just kind of like what your school district policy has relating to some of the supplementary programs that you'll learn about and learn more about within the course. You'll also do three interviews. You'll interview if your district has a federal programs director, and in smaller districts, this might be the same person that does a lot of these roles. So one interview is a federal programs director, one interview is an early childhood director, and another interview is a special services director. So in your district, if that's the same person, I would encourage you to maybe reach out to a neighboring district. It's always really interesting to see the differences in how different districts handle these. And so if you can, I would definitely encourage you to seek other people in those positions if you don't have a different person for each one of those. If you have a hard time finding one of those people, let me know and I can connect you with some people that would be happy to help you with that. And then you're also going to compare two districts that receive Perkins funding, Perkins grant funding. So you'll have to dig into some DESE data, filter in through, it's called something else now, I can't remember what it's called, but through the DESE data system to figure out who those districts are. And you'll do some analysis and compare two districts that are receiving the same kind of funding. And then looking at page 11, also going to compare two school districts that receive Title I funding. So again, digging into the DESE data, comparing different points for two schools receiving Title I funding. And then kind of the culminating project of this is going to be what is called a major report. And it's really just digging deep into one of the programs. So each week as we go along, you'll learn a little bit about a few programs each week. And then as you get into week 8, your major project is just a deeper dive into one of those programs. On page 11, just kind of like as a checklist for you guys, is the list of assignments, when they're due, how many points they're worth, and how many points overall for the course. So that's a good place to go if you're just like a checklist person to keep things organized. So the next part of this, I'm not going to dig too deep in, page 12 and 13. It's just a little bit more in the policy, expectations, grading. So if you have any questions about any of the other content in the syllabus, just let me know. So the rest of the syllabus, until we get to the appendix at the end, is a week-by-week breakdown of what you need to do. And so one of the things, I'm going to share my screen for a second. One of the things that I'm going to send, when I send the link to this call, I'm going to send this for each of my classes, I always do a one-pager of all of the things. It's kind of like the checklist on page 11 here, but it's just a little week-by-week breakdown of all the things that you need to do. So pages 13 through 28, where it breaks down the week and what you do each week, I just put here in one place, and anything that's green is something that is supposed to be turned in. So I will send this, use it if you want, trash it if you don't want it. It's just kind of something that sometimes, as you may have figured out, some of the syllabi for these courses are like 50, 60, 70 pages long, and it's hard to get through those and stay organized. So I always try to offer this to my online classes so that you have it as a resource if you need it. So I will put it there if you need it. And then as far as each week, it's pretty self-explanatory as far as the resources that are linked there and what the expectation is. If there's a journal post, like the direction that you need to take for the journal post will be in the syllabus or in the link within Brightspace. Same for discussion boards and responses and things like that. I don't think there was anything that really stuck out in those pages. If you go to page 29, which starts Appendix A. So that chunk of pages 13 to 28 is just a week-by-week breakdown. That'll be your detail to know for sure what you need to do. So on page 29, this is your the support programs, the supplemental programs that you're going to be learning each week. This is the list of what you'll be reading and learning about, but it's also the list that you'll pick from for your major project. So I think in week 2, I'm going to make sure before I say that. I think next week, one of the things that you have to do is tell me which program you want to have. So just take a look at that page 29, Appendix A, and journal post, activity. Yep. So week 2, your last task for week 2 is to tell me which topic you want. So if any of these programs are unfamiliar to you, you won't read about all of them between now and the end of week 2. So if you want to dig into anything or pick something you may not know about so you can learn more about it, or maybe pick something that's more relevant to your district so you can learn more about it, you will just let me know at the end of week 2 which one of those programs you want to do. Then it's actually on page 32, so you'll skip a couple pages. But the rubric for the major report is the very last page of your syllabus, and it lists in here. It also lists in the assignments part at the beginning of the syllabus and in week 8 in the weekly part of the syllabus. And all of those parts, it lists what goes into the major report. And so really, like I said, you're just digging in deep, like what is the origin of the program? What's the history of it? A little bit of background about it, who's eligible for it, what's the funding that's tied to it, are there any programming requirements that have to be implemented in schools because you're receiving that supplemental support, any special considerations that have to be included for schools as they're requesting that supplemental support, and then also just making sure that you're analyzing the program. And then, of course, your writing and grammar and all of that stuff will count too. But really, the bulk of it is, are you able to pull out the pieces of that supplemental program to meet the bullet point list of the things that need to be in there? So it's pretty self-explanatory, but just making sure that you know that those bits and pieces are scattered in are in several places in your syllabus. And then the only other thing is the article review, reflect, react expectation. So on page 30, it will share a little bit about a little more about what goes into those. So again, you are choosing the article, use the library resource as much as you can. Make sure that you are reading and understanding the content of the article, because your summary should be in your own words and not really be, I mean, of course you're going to use citations, APA formatting, but so you're going to have obviously some content from the article, but not enough to where I'm not sure if you really understand it or if you're just pulling information from the article. You will connect that article, each one of these that you do, you'll connect the content of the article back to the Missouri Leader Standards and education in general and content of this class, and just kind of reflect on the program, or I'm sorry, on the article overall. And there is a rubric on page 31 for those review, reflect, reactions for your article that's chosen. And so, you know, it's pretty open-ended what you guys can choose to pull for your article, but it needs to align to the course content somehow. But it doesn't say like specifically what you need to do. Questions about any of that, or about how the course will operate, or anything at all? No questions?
Okay, just looking through, I am already overwhelmed. There seems like a lot.
Yeah, there is a lot. And that's one of the reasons I do that one pager, so that I can just kind of really look and see week to week, what am I doing? What is due? So I am not opposed to editing. So I know that there's, let me see.
I mean, like just next week, there are 5 assignments, and one of them, I mean, they seem all very large. And
yeah. So I think one of the things that I could do, I'm happy to do, is every week there's a journal post. I feel like we could probably edit out a few of those. I do want to keep the article reflections, but maybe we can take it down to 2 instead of 3.
I love that idea, but looking at it, it just automatically overwhelmed me with everything. I'm like, oh my gosh, do I need to wait to take this class?
Right. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot like normally. And then on top of everything that we're having to take on right now in work and school is going to be even more.
Yeah.
So, okay, before I send the recording and that one pager, I'm going to take a look in Brightspace at those journals every week, and I'll take a few of those out. I'll take out one of the article review, reflect items. Let me see, journal and the reviews. And let's see. Probably one of the interviews. I think if we took out one of those interviews, that could be fine. And I think what I would do, what I'm going to suggest is I will leave all 3 as an option. And whichever 2 you have access to, just do those 2. But you only would need to do 2 of them.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you. And thank you, Amanda, for saying something. I didn't want to be like that, oh, I've got a baby, this is overwhelming person, but I was like, how am I going to do all this and online teach and in-person teach?
That's where I am. Online teaching, in-person teaching, all of that. And yeah, it overwhelmed me immediately.
Okay. So that would take it down to, if here, let me share this screen again, and we'll just edit while we're talking. Are you guys able to see that? Okay, so I am going to where it says interview. I'm going to take out the interview for next week because I feel like that's a lot to interview and write next week. Like, I'll have that done by next week. So I'm going to take that one out. And then I'm going to have in week 5, let me make this a little bit smaller. In week 5, where it says complete early childhood director interview, I'm going to change that to just say complete interview number 1. And then you can just choose which one of those 3 you have access to and you can do. And then in week 6, there's another interview. I'm going to take out the specific person and just say complete interview 2. So that takes out an interview. Then let me make sure. I think on those review, reflect, react responses for your articles, I don't think in any of the weeks in particular that it says a specific topic that you have to do. It just says that it needs to be about a supplemental program. So review, reflect. Let's do, there's one next week, there's one in week 3, and one in week 5. So next week right now you have a journal post, 2 discussion forums, and then you have to submit your major topic choice. Would it be helpful if I lighten the load next week so that you can do the prep for the rest of the term? So like next week you would have the journal, 2 discussion boards, and you have to figure out what topic you want. And then that way you can also spend some time next week finding articles for you to use in the weeks when you have your article reviews.
I really like that idea because whenever I first looked at submit the topic, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't even know much about some of these topics. So
Okay.
that'll give us time to really research what topic we want to explore.
All right, so instead of complete the review reflection, I'm just going to put just to search for those articles. And then we'll have one in week 5 and then one in week, where did it go? 6? Nope. Oh, week 3 and week 5. Okay, so took out one of those. And then before I take out journals, just in a random week, I want to go in Brightspace and look at the content of the journals because I didn't write this course. So they were all pre-written and decided. So I'm going to go in and take a look at what the topics are, and then I'll go back in here and edit. But so this week we'll have your introduction discussion forum, your journal post, and then your week 1 discussion forum. And then next week, you'll do a lot of review and starting to look at things. You'll have a journal post, 2 discussion forums, and you'll decide on your topic for your major report. Would you like to move I mean, you have several things due in week 3. Do you feel like you need more time to look at the topics for your report and move that to week 3? Or do you want to leave it in week 2 since we took some of that week 2 content out? Leave it? Okay. Okay. If for some reason you can't and you're not sure and you don't want to pick one and you need a few extra days, just let me know. Okay, so that leaves you about 3 things due each week. And then in week 2 and 3, you have 4 things due. But it's not, like, I feel like it's doable. Next week is just picking a topic and some discussion boards. So that's probably more doable. Okay, how do you feel about this?
I have a question, and maybe you answered it. I just didn't, maybe I wrote it down somewhere. Parker, honey, can't do that right now. Sorry, my kid's trying to cook supper. On the journal post, is there like a minimum requirement for words? I don't know if I missed that somewhere or not.
I don't believe so.
Because I just realized as I was flipping through this that our discussion posts are supposed to be a minimum of 300 words. And I'm not certain that mine was this week because I missed that.
Yeah, that's okay. It's not a big deal. Your journals. It doesn't say anything that there's a minimum word count unless I would go into,
And I didn't see it like on Brightspace when I was posting my, my discussion board, but I know I just saw it when I was flipping through here and I thought, oh, I did not check that.
No, I don't believe there is a minimum. I think it's just really looking for your response. If I get in there in week 1 and I'm looking at things, so usually what will happen is I will grade everything on a Monday and that was due that Sunday. And if there's anything that's missing or you have questions on anything, then I will send emails on Monday to just kind of follow up and clarify. And then, so if I notice anything on Monday, when I'm looking at week 1 journal and discussion boards, I'll send an email that just says, that here's what we need to be doing. So that's the other thing. And I will apologize in advance for the emails and all of the things, but I also just know how crazy it is and I don't want you guys to forget about something or forget an assignment. So each Monday, I'll grade your work from the last week and then I email the whole group with just a reminder, this is what you're working on this week. And then if there's any kind of notes or commentary that needs to go in there, I'll include that in the email also. But you should hear from me every Monday as far as like what you need to plan for this week. I just like to err on the side of caution because like this stuff can get left behind or lost somewhere. So that way, there's a weekly communication of what to plan for.
Well, I really appreciate that actually, because we've all been in all the same classes over the last year, and we've had many where there was no or very little communication, and it was very confusing and last minute. And I hope I'm not just speaking for myself, but that's just how I feel. And
I was going to say the same thing, Heather. I appreciate that. I know Heather and I have been in several together, and it's like, I guess we're doing what we're supposed to. We don't really know.
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Question on the getting to know you discussion post, the introduction one, it asked us to respond back to our own thread with who we had replied to. Do we need to do that for every discussion post, or was that just like a one-time thing on that one?
You don't need to do that. Maybe if there was like 20 people in here, I might need you to do that, but there's only 7 of us and I don't feel like you need to worry about that. So if you didn't do it this week, don't worry about going back and doing it. If you did do it, that's fine. If it says to do it in weeks 2 through 8, if you do it, that's fine. If you don't, that's fine. It's okay. So what I do is I'm an old school person and I've got a good old fashioned checklist that I keep track of everything on. So when we do a discussion forum, I have it on here and I just make a note of a P when you post and an R when you reply. And then if you've got 1 P and 2 R's, you're good. So no big deal. All right, well, I don't want to keep you guys any longer. I will hang out as long as you need if you have questions. I'm going to go in and look at the journals and then decide what we can edit. And then I'll update the 1-pager and then I'll send everything out in an email by the end of the day tomorrow.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys. I'm glad you could make it in.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Take care.
You too.